Another international break and another rash of injuries for the United States men's national team, which begs the question, are we ever going to see Mauricio Pochettino's best 11 guys playing together before the World Cup? It's not looking good, and we're going to run out of opportunities really fast. We're going to talk about why that is and why this keeps happening next here on Pints and Punditry at the Pitchside Pub. So the answer's probably no, but it's not really anybody to blame. This is just world football today. There are so many injuries, so many guys getting worn down, so many games on the schedule, the wear and tear. It's why you have to have depth, and that's actually a credit to the United States and their developmental program. The amount of depth that they have now compared to where it was 5 or 6 years ago is actually really impressive. There was a time not long ago when, yes, the starting 11 was on par with maybe the top 15, 20 teams in the world, but as soon as one guy got hurt, it really went downhill quick and you didn't have a lot of depth to replace him. That's not the case now. You can make a case that when everybody is healthy and in form, you've got 15 to 18 starting caliber players that you'd like to see rotating in there. Certainly more than the starting 11. Maybe in your definition it's more like 13 or 14, but there's a lot. There's some good depth, and there's guys that aren't even making this roster that make you say, man, that's a good player. He really ought to be there. That's a nice problem to have. But we got to have our starting 11 out there at some point between now and the World Cup to play together and play together under this new system. They know each other. They've played together a long time, but playing under Pochettino together is different than playing under Berhalter together. And so are we going to get an opportunity to have those guys playing together? And I'm not so sure we are, and there's a couple reasons for it, but we're going to get into that in a second with the help of our demo tactics board from James Alcott. If you don't already follow James, I'm not sure what you're doing watching my video, but James is one of the best creators on YouTube about football content. He's got this great tactics board that he's letting us demo, so we're going to use that here in a second to break down what I think is the best US 11, at least at the moment, when everybody's healthy. So we're going to get into that in a second. Give James a follow if you don't already, and make sure you hit the subscribe button for my channel down below so you can follow this and all the videos that we put out. Get down in the comment section too. What do you think about this? The roster, the injuries. Get down in that comment section. Let me know your thoughts. You can also leave some comments on Twitter at Pitchside Pub, and check out the website pitchsidepub.com. So I say injuries in quotes because that's sort of what Antoine Robinson's dealing with here, right? The recent news was that Antoine Robinson, Austin Trusty, and Johnny Cardoso are going to miss this Nations League period, this international break, despite being named on the original roster. And Trusty's no real surprise. He didn't even dress for his last game. Johnny Cardoso we saw leave early for Real Betis, so that one makes sense. But Antoine Robinson played 90 minutes for Fulham over the weekend, and so his inclusion in that list of injured players that aren't going to be there was a real surprise, because you have to think if this was a World Cup game or a qualifier or something that really mattered, he'd be there, and he's not, simply because of the need for rest and recovery, which, by the way, I don't begrudge him at all. In fact, that's a really key point. I don't blame Robinson for saying, hey, I need a couple weeks to rest and recover and not train hard and not come out here and play in games, possibly get hurt, maybe tweak a hammy, who knows what. I don't blame him one bit. He has been one of Fulham's best players. He's been arguably the best left back in the Premier League, or certainly in the discussion this season. They are competing for a spot in Europe. Every game is going to matter, and if he needs a little time to get refreshed, I don't blame him. That's fine. But therein lies the problem of the lack of time between when Pochettino was hired and the start of the World Cup, and the lack of competitive games for the United States. They just simply don't have that many of them, so when a player like Robinson needs to take an international break off, it really hurts the development of this cohesive unit as a whole, playing together under this new manager. Again, I don't begrudge Robinson, but it does set them back a little bit, and there aren't that many opportunities. Yeah, they've got some friendlies over the summer, but they're not the same. The level of intensity is just not the same in the friendlies. The Nations League is not, the end-all be-all. It's not a qualifier, for crying out loud, but at least the other teams are going to be playing hard, and it would be a competitive situation, a competitive atmosphere that you'd see the players ramp up a little bit into. So it does hurt that they're not around, but I understand it. But it does beg the question, are we ever going to see that best 11 together between now and the World Cup? And more importantly, who is that best 11? So with the help of James Alcott's tactics board here, I've got what I think is probably the best 11 for the United States, making the massive assumption that everybody is healthy and in form, right? Which is obviously not always the case. In fact, it's rarely the case. But if everybody was, that's our jumping off point. I would say it's probably this, in some sort of formation like this, with a few possibilities that you could rotate out. You'll notice that Giovanni Reyna is missing here. Well, it has become less and less likely that he's ever in form. I'm not sure what his best form is at this point because he's healthy so infrequently and because he just so rarely plays. So can we even assume that his best form is one of our best 11 at this point? You can make the argument. I could go either way, but I'm not sure that his spot on this roster is a given anymore. However, because of the depth and because of the flexibility of some of these players, if you wanted to bring him in, maybe McKennie slides back and maybe that's where Johnny Cardoso comes out. Hard as that is to say because Cardoso has been brilliant, but so has McKennie, and he's a guy who needs to be out there somewhere and can play in multiple spots. We don't know what's going to happen with Sergiño Dest coming back from his injury. He is on the mend, but that could easily be Joe Scally, who is playing really well as well. Part of this also depends on the formation that we may see. We could see 4 at the back. We could see 3 at the back. And if that happens, we need to get another center back on here. If it's Dest out there, he would need to come off. But if it's Scally, he could play at that right center back position here and do just fine. And then Robinson slides up, and you need somebody down in this spot. Now that could be a couple different guys. It could be McKennie sliding over and Johnny Cardoso and play something, get Reyna out of there and play something along these lines, a 3-4-2-1. That could very easily happen. Or take Cardoso off again. You could see Yunus Musa come on there if you wanted a little more attacking prowess. Musa could play out there and McKennie could play there. Musa can play up top if Weah's hurt. We got a lot of options, but I think the key, the core here is those 11 guys I had at the start plus Dest, Cardoso, Reyna, and a backup striker, whether that's Pepe or Sargent or whoever it is. Trusty's going to be on this bench at some point because he's played pretty well. I think he makes it onto this bench, but he's not one of the key core guys, in my opinion. Tim Ream will play in this Nations League, but God help us if we are still relying on Tim Ream by 2026. And I love Tim Ream and I love what he's done, but if he is still one of our 2 best center backs by 2026, we've really done this to ourselves and we don't deserve to win because he's just aging and now he's playing in MLS and it's just not the best situation for us. He could be Pochettino's assistant. I'd be cool with that. But that's sort of the other guys who are going to rotate in. I wouldn't consider Ream or Pepe to be starting all that often, but based on your opponent and your personnel and your own form and your own fatigue and rotation, I think the 10 guys you see out there plus these 3, 13 guys for 10 spots plus a keeper seems very realistic for a core group that we'd like to see play most often. So don't get too hung up on the formation because even in the base 11 that we had out there, this could go 4-2-3-1, something like that, right? With Reyna obviously jumping in there instead, or Cardoso jumping in there and McKennie coming up here, something like that. You got a lot of options, especially when McKennie and Musa are on the pitch. You've got tons of options because these guys can play so many different positions, right? All of a sudden you want to swing this to, 4. You could even drop McKennie back and let him play some center back and he'd hold his own. He's just such a versatile player, but maybe that's where Musa comes off and Scally comes on, or maybe that's where Tim Ream gets some time, particularly in this Nations League matchup. But you've got a lot of options. You got a lot of versatility, you got a lot of options, and you got a lot of good players. So it's a nice problem to have. But at some point, we really do need to see everybody on the pitch together. And so, when guys like Robinson miss these windows, it really does hurt. And I do think that there is a real possibility that we will not see the full, squad clicking on all cylinders until the World Cup. And that's risky. that's risky to not have them play together under this new system for all this time and then just hope it clicks in come World Cup time. It is risky, but it's not like that's a plan. That's just the sort of thing that happens because guys get injured and guys need rest and guys have other commitments. And so it's just a nature of the beast for the United States. The plus side, the silver lining, is it does give other guys a chance to shine, show Pochettino what they can do, develop that depth, and give us more of a rotation. And it makes the back end of the World Cup roster in 2026 a real discussion and really quite relevant because some of those guys might actually play. So I'd love to get your thoughts. How big of a deal is it that these guys are missing this time? Get down in that comment section. Let me know your thoughts. You can also leave comments on Twitter and Blue Sky at Pitchside Pub. While you're at it, hit the subscribe button for me down below so you can follow the channel and check out the website, pitchsidepub.com. Special thanks to James Alcott for letting us demo that tactics board again. Thanks as always for joining us here on Pints and Punditry at the Pitchside Pub.